Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome to our webinar this morning. And I'm really excited to see all of you joining here. I'm going to say hello to some people shortly. First of all, I want to introduce you to Tony Corrigan, who is here this morning and giving us his time to help us. Hi, Tony.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. We're just having a cup of tea, everybody, so do grab a cup of tea. This is a relaxed webinar to help you and your business. So, Tony, obviously, everybody, it's difficult times at the moment, but Tony, tell us a little bit about what you do and a little bit about yourself as well.
Sure. So I run a company called Orbidal, and Orbidal exists to help other small and medium-sized businesses win government contracts. And my own background is I started out working as a software engineer, and back in those days, we were called programmers. And I ended up having to write sales documents and pitch for contracts, and it's not anything that anybody was born to do or wants to do. So we spent the last 5 years trying to simplify the process to the point where anybody who is good enough to do the job, we can help them overcome the challenges of the process and win the business.
Really, you know what? And it's a brilliant service that you. I know you're actually. I've used it to go for tenders successfully, and you know I feel that what the service you offer is really, really valuable because a lot of small business owners feel like they can't go for tenders. Do you find that?
Yeah, like only 6% of companies in Ireland actually compete for tenders, and there's 250,000 companies in Ireland who could potentially be doing that business. One of the biggest problems that the public sector has is that almost nobody goes for tenders. 1 in 4 tenders, only one company goes for. 1 in 10 tenders, nobody goes for at all. So there's any number of opportunities there, but people just don't put themselves forward.
Why do you think that is?
It's fear. It's fear of all the documentation. I'm working on a contract later on today, and there are 150 documents to complete. Now, most of the documents you just have to sign, but if you haven't done one of these before and somebody says, we can give you this business, but there's all this documentation to go through, most people will just say, I'm not going to bother. But that's really why we exist. We do maybe 30 of these a week, so it's bread and butter to us to go through these documents, figure out what's important. Honestly, in those 150 documents, there's probably only 4 pages worth reading. And our expertise is focusing on that, and then just making sure that there's a very logical process to delivering a really great proposal.
Yeah, I have to say, I don't know about you guys in the chat, if you want to let us know what you feel. Definitely, I would maybe think of going for tender, and then I get to a certain thing and I go, for God's sake, I just leave it. I just give up. So, you know, I think a lot of us, there is a little thing of, well, for me anyway, for form filling. So do you want to share your screen? We're going to do a little presentation to help people. So if everyone wants to sit back and relax and take all this in, this is really going to be informative for you. What it is, what a winning tender looks like. Now, Tony won't be able to see your comments. I will, so I'll keep an eye on the comments, Tony, if you want to go ahead.
Okay, great. Everyone can see this okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, super. So I guess the reason that we put this webinar together is because it's all well and good to say to people that you should compete for tenders. But it's like, I always kind of liken it to when I was doing English in school, where, you know, you might be lucky to scrape a C in old money, and you'd hear, and you wouldn't know why it's worth a C versus an A, and then you'd hear the A response and you'd go, yeah, there's something much better about that. I can't put my finger on it, but I know there's something better about it. So over the past 5 years, we've worked on about 5,000 proposals, which is really an incredible number, but we've seen an awful lot of A's in that time. We've written an awful lot of A's, and what I'm going to show you now is what the difference between an A submission and a C submission is, really. So we'll talk about what buyers expect to see in a submission, how they're actually scored, and I guess the psychology of how you get from an average score to a high score. What a winning tender actually looks like. About 80% of the tenders that we compete for companies win, so we have a good idea of what a winning one looks like. And then there's 2 important parts of a winning tender: the case study and the employee CV. So I'm going to show you some examples of what they look like as well. and then maybe we'll talk about some next steps. So first off, this is how tenders are scored. Now, in the top right-hand corner, just to point you to it, 90% is the type of score that you should be focusing on getting to win a contract. But the average score that companies get is about 60%. So if you look at the scoring there, between 60 and 79%, that's a satisfactory response. That basically means you've answered the question. And to be honest, from an evaluator point of view, they assume that everybody putting in a proposal can actually deliver the service. So the very minimum they expect is that you answer the question. Unfortunately, that's where most companies stop. So to get a better score, there's two things you need to do. So to get between 80 and 90%, what you need to do is provide a real understanding that you understand what the requirement is and what the buyer is looking for. So we often call that demonstrable evidence of experience and expertise. And it's as simple as instead of just saying, we can do the job, it's saying, we can do the job and we have already done it for this company and it worked out this way for them. And that's an 80 to 90% response. And then a 90 to 100% response, it's we've worked for, we can do this, we have worked for this company and we've delivered it. And the way that is similar to what you are looking for is, and explain what the similarity is. Buyers want to know that you can do the job, but that you can do the job for them. And the only way that they can ascertain that you can do that is by you telling them. So that's really the difference. Most companies will just answer the question. It's the companies that provide evidence that they can really do the job that score 80, 90, and 100%. So in one way, it's as simple as that. And this is what buyers expect to see in a tender submission. So the first thing is professionalism, a table of contents. It's amazing how many companies do not put in a table of contents. But I know when I'm sitting on the evaluation side, if I don't see a table of contents, I don't know what's in the document, and you're not making it easy for me. In fact, I could easily miss a whole section that you have provided just because I didn't see it and didn't know to look for it. Again, spell checking is really important. If you're not going to take the time to check the spelling on your submission, it's not likely you're going to put the same commitment into actually delivering a good service. And it should be well formatted so that they can actually read it. This second one is important. It's about understanding. You need to understand what the buyer is looking for, and you need to understand what they need. And they expect to see that. They expect you to go beyond just looking at their requirements and just responding to that. What they like to see is that you understand why they are looking for what they are looking for. And that's important. And again, you'll always see suppliers that can establish an empathy by just going beyond what's on the written page. They do much, much better in winning the favor of buyers. Again, one question we're often asked is around how much to answer. And really it's about only putting in relevant content. So answers need to be related to the questions. There's no filler in there. You don't fill up pages just because you happen to have the content. What you really want are short and precise answers that just say exactly what it is on the tin. And then finally, value for money. And you know, your proposal needs to be relative to the available budget. If they have €50,000 to spend, there's no point in you providing a proposal for €30,000 because that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for a €50,000 proposal. And there needs to be a good ratio of quality to cost. So it's not the case. I mean, a lot of companies will come to me and say that they're too expensive to compete for public contracts, or it always goes to the cheapest company. And that's just not true at all. What actually happens is that it does often go to the cheapest company, but not because they're the cheapest, but because all of the submissions are very poor and it's the least risky option just to go with the cheapest. But I was involved in a competition just recently where one bid was €200,000 and the other bid was €330,000, and that's the one that won the competition. Again, it's not their money, it's your money. So all they're looking for is value. So as long as you're delivering value and it's relative to the budget, then that's exactly what you need to do.
By the way, if any questions come in, if you have any questions, if you click the Ask a Question button, we will go over the questions afterwards. So if you click the Ask a Question button, I can keep track of all the questions for Tony. Thanks, Tony.
Okay, thanks, Sam. This is what the table of contents in a winning tender typically looks like. And I guess a winning tender as well, just to give you an idea of size, you know, for pretty much any contract, you should probably be submitting about 30 pages of relevant content. And if you don't think you have 30 pages of relevant content, then we can probably talk about that. But these are the kinds of things that I would expect to see. This is just an example from a creative tender that we worked on just recently. You'll see at the start there's some general information, typically your name and address, tax clearance information if you have it, your methodology and approach. And let me just point you to the understanding of need. That's where you really win the minds and hearts of the evaluators by demonstrating that you actually understand what they're looking for. You're talking about your project team. You're talking about your method statements and how you're actually going to deliver. You're talking about your relevant experience. And this is important, delivering projects of a similar scale and complexity. There's no point in giving examples of work that has no relevance to the particular job in hand. There's typically a cost element to add in. Detailed CVs of team and resources, and I'll provide that shortly. Detailed methodology. And you'll see here that a lot of the early part of the document is the synopsis of what the overall solution is. And the idea is that as an evaluator is reading the document, they don't have to go very far. They only really have to go to page 16 in this particular case, which is half the document, to basically understand whether you're going to deliver a solution of value and of quality at the right price. And the rest of it is really just supporting of that information. So again, that's how you would organize a winning tender. As an evaluator, if I was given a proposal to evaluate without a table of contents, I would look very poorly on it.
You see, this is it, and this is what put me off also. And I'm just being devil's advocate here. I know for me, looking at that makes me feel full of fear because it looks so complicated. So that's why I obviously went to you guys and hired you guys to do it for me. But like, isn't it terrible the way they just want, you're really just telling them what you can do, but like in a more complicated way, kind of, I feel. That's just me.
Yeah. Let me actually just, I'll go to that just in 2 slides time, because I think that's very relevant, Sam. And I guess the fundamental challenge that a lot of companies have is actually saying what they do. And being, right. And I guess this is a structure to say that, but I'll go into it in some detail in just a moment. When I talk about what content looks like, if I point you to the content on the left, so answer the question that's asked, no superfluous detail, make sure it's well formatted, no spelling errors, and most importantly, make sure it's understandable. You need to remember that the evaluator doesn't know how to do what you can do. And they can't do it themselves. That's why they have put a tender in place. So it's really, really important to make sure that the content you are writing is understandable to somebody who is not an expert in what it is that they're buying. And never assume that they actually know what they're buying. If you don't tell them, they're not going to understand what it is. We use a tool called the Gunning Fog Score, and you can find this on the internet if you just search for that term. Basically, you can put any sentence you like into a text box, press the button, and it will tell you how understandable it is. So we just have an example there. The top piece of text there has a score of 20.1, which basically means you need to be a professor to be able to understand it. While the second one only really requires you to finish secondary school. But the interesting thing is most people will write in the style in the first example. So most proposals that are submitted, they just can't be understood. And that's, again, why it's often the cheapest proposal that wins. It's because they can't understand any of them, so they just choose the cheapest.
Wow.
So that's what content looks like. So that's just a good thing. You can do that with any piece of content. You could also do that with your websites, because again, very often that's the first port of call that people will have for you. And if they can't understand from your website what you do, then that's going to follow through to the rest of your documentation as well. Let me just show you an example of a winning case study. So you don't necessarily need to add all of this. There are two really important parts of a tender document. It's what you've done as a business, which is your case study, and then what you can do as an individual, which is your CV. So if you look at this is in two parts. The information at the start is the standard contact name and value and so forth. There's a detailed contract description. Most people will start down there at the bottom of the first column, service delivery and project description, and they will spend maybe 30 to 50 words describing the piece of work that they did for a contract. I'm working on a cleaning contract today, as it happens, and I asked my client for their case study for a particular office facility that they were cleaning. And honestly, the case study was, and I paraphrase, we cleaned this office, including the walls, the carpets, the desks, on a regular basis. And that's the case study. And they're wondering why that's not good enough. And it's not good enough because I don't know who they're doing the cleaning for. So that's the first part here, the context. Just describe who you did the work for. Most importantly, describe what the challenge was, why they asked you to do the work, or what their particular problem was. For example, in cleaning contracts now, a lot of the challenge with the cleaning is that they need to protect against COVID-19. So they need deep cleaning services. So they're not necessarily going to say in the RFP that the reason they need a cleaning of a facility done is because it was recently used by people who now have coronavirus. But they will say cleaning, and what you want to make sure is that you understand the reason behind the tender, but also when you're putting your case studies together, that you can actually say exactly what it was, something beyond the actual service delivery. You talk about your approach, and this is really important. This is where you set yourself apart from other people. Remember, everybody can deliver the service. Everybody can do that. It's how you approach it that is going to decide whether they award the contract to you or not. And finally, over here on the right-hand side, outcomes. You need to say what you did and why it was great. And so many times companies, they assume that everybody understands that they're delivering a great service. But to most evaluators, they don't know the difference between an average service and a great service. You know, when I go and get my car serviced, you know, it just gets serviced. I don't know if it was a good or a bad service. Somebody would need to tell me. So that's the only way I can differentiate, if you tell me why you're great. And absolutely, you know, the tendering situation is absolutely no place for shyness. You're competing against other companies, and you need to say why you are better and why you are more worthy of winning the contract. And then the last little bit, sorry, go ahead, Sam.
No, I was just going to say, just for people watching, welcome, by the way. We have a few new people have joined: Rolf, Chris, Yvonne, Anne. Lovely to see you. Just one little thing that people watching might be thinking, you know, have you, like, it's not necessarily the bigger companies that win the tenders either, folks. So that's all I want.
No, it's not. And you know, I've just started actually, even that cleaning contract again. The last time that contract was put out, it was awarded to companies who had a turnover, an average of 500,000 euro. This iteration of the contract, the new one, the average turnover requirement is 120,000 euro. And it's because, you know, the government, just like everyone else, one, they do really genuinely want to support smaller businesses, but two, they tend to find that you get better value from smaller businesses because they're more flexible and agile and more willing to go the extra mile to win the contract and to retain the contract. For larger companies, it often doesn't matter to them whether they win the contract or not, because there's another 20 just like it in their business. It's not as important to them. And we, you know, most of the companies we would work with, you know, 95% of them, you know, have turnovers of less than 3 million euro. Probably 40% have turnover of less than 500,000 euro. And it makes no difference whatsoever to their success in winning contracts or not. Okay, so just that last bit there, just explain why you're giving them this case study. So it's important that they know why. So sometimes it's not necessarily obvious to them, and sometimes you will find, especially if you don't have a lot of public sector experience, that you need to rely on examples that are a little bit tangential. So it's important to take time to say why you're showing them this example and how the experience is relevant to this contract. And bear in mind, often the evaluator won't ask you to put your case study in this format because they won't know what they're looking for. And to be honest, most evaluators have very little, if any, training in how to read proposals or put tenders together. So you need to tell them why it's great. And, you know, I suppose one great trick is just by telling them it's similar and it's exactly what they're looking for. You know, often that's good enough because they believe you. But there's a lot of trust in what you're saying in the proposal. Okay, and then the final part then is your CV. So this is just a sample of one of my CVs. Let me just say, first of all, if you can put in a picture of yourself, do it. People buy from people. A short biography is what you want just at the start, 100 to 150 words, summarizing your suitability, your key achievements, significant clients, any particular awards. So something just like this, that's about the right size. And the second part then is your relevant experience. So when you're competing for a tender, it doesn't matter where you've worked in the past. It doesn't matter who's paid you. Or what roles or responsibilities you've had. It's not a job interview. It's an experience and expertise demonstration. So where you are going to get the marks is by providing examples of work that you've done and why it was good work. So demonstrable evidence of experience and expertise, just to have it written in there. It's not good enough. You will get no marks for saying my title was Chief Operating Officer and my responsibilities were HR, payroll, employee management, because that does not tell me whether you were actually any good at the job, whether you were impactful. What I want to see are companies that you've worked for, and I suppose this is great for smaller companies because you can leverage all the experience that you've had, whether the clients were direct clients or whether you just happened to be working on those projects for that particular company. You can put all of that into your CV. And again, you can even do that to a certain extent with your case studies. You know, so for smaller companies or companies starting out, use the entirety of your experience, your career's experience and expertise. Put that into the tender documentation. Don't worry about who was paying you or whether they were actually your client or not. It's just important to get down the actual experience and expertise. So those are some examples of, and you can actually get all of this documentation. So the way to do that is if you register, and you can do this for free at app.orbidalgroup.com. That's our online application. There are things like tender alerts in there. There's sample content. This webinar is in there, and the examples of the case studies and the CVs, that's all in there as well. And the second thing I'd be happy to offer is if you just contact me at info@or tony@orbidalgroup.com, I'll be more than happy to have a chat with you about your particular business. And I guess even in this, the COVID-19 changed times, whether there are actually opportunities for you in government. So that's all the slides that I have. So maybe I'll just hand back to you, Sam.
Great, yeah, thank you so much. I'm just closing that presentation. Just so you know as well, I just put a call to action down the bottom of the screen if people want to schedule a demo with you as well. So does anyone have any questions? I know a few people joined there. Any questions? I'm sure a lot of people do have questions, so please don't hesitate to ask now while we're here. I know for me, if you see a tender, like, first of all, is make sure everybody's signed up for e-tenders, or if you want to talk to Tony, he can show you what to do. Laura has said, excellent webinar, very informative. Some things I haven't been including. That's great. And these slides, Tony, are they available to the people that came along?
They are, yeah. So if you go to app.orbitalgroup.com, we have a section in there called the Bid Academy, and there's a bunch of training content there, and this webinar is part of that.
Brilliant. And if you want to follow you on Twitter, because a lot of us are on Twitter, I'll just throw the Twitter handle in here as well. I know for me, Tony, I found tenders very intimidating, and I felt like, well, why can't they just, they know that I'm the best at the social media and all of that. And, you know, why can't they just come to me, like, you know, and then I'd go for the tender, and then I just get frustrated because I never went to college and I didn't have the big words, and I just felt really intimidated by it. So I think that could be, like, if I'm getting intimidated by it, I'd say other small business owners would too. So, you know, do you find that yourself, or what do you come across?
Yeah, so, you know, I mean, we work with a few different types of clients. So we work with big companies who know everything, and they're just using us as labor. But the majority of the companies that we work with, they're just really good at what they do. So whether that's social media or videography or plumbing or whatever it is, but they're not very good at writing proposals. And, you know, it's not a criticism, but why would you if you're only doing it 3 or 4 times a year and you're looking at all this arcane documentation that comes from, you know, the European Commission? How would you know? So we're doing it, we're doing 6 or 7 tenders every day. And there is a structure to it. So once you understand the structure, it actually becomes very easy. The second thing is the questions are always the same, or pretty much the same. The only bits that you really need to change each time are your experience and expertise, and making sure that they are aligned with the customer need. But everything else, like they'll ask you what your quality approach is, your contract management, all of that is pretty much the same. So again, one of the things that we've done to speed it up for ourselves is we've written that content, we test it in a few competitions, and then we make it available to our subscribers and say, well, that's the answer that normally scores 95% for contract management or risk management or whatever it is. And you know, because we've worked on 5,000 or so proposals, there aren't many questions that we haven't seen. Yeah. Each time we do see a new question, like we do see new questions coming up this year around diversity and the environment. These are all important things. So we write new answers to those and we include them in the tenders. So really, a lot of the companies that come to us, they just say, you might have even done this, just say, will you just write the tender for me and then just give me the answer. and like sometimes that's the easiest thing to do, because we will know what the answer is meant to look like, and then it's and hopefully we can articulate your vision and uniqueness in maybe we'll get 80% of the way there, but then you're working in your space and your area of expertise, rather than trying to because we've given you the answer and this is the format, and insert here your top 3 customers, rather than just trying to figure out, well, what's the question even mean? Never mind. Sometimes
what does the question even mean? I agree. We have a question from Barry. Considering that so many tenders go with limited or no applicants, do tenders offer an opportunity to grow your business laterally in a different direction once you can prove some tangible, at least, experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even to give you an example from ourselves, we won a contract back in 2003 with NEWB, and we ended up doing all sorts of things there. And we were working with them through to 2017. And, it started off with one thing and it ended up as something totally different. So you find that once you get known and recognized and trusted in a public sector organization, then it's the easiest thing for them to keep working with you. Absolutely. It's a great way of growing your business.
Yeah, get your foot in the door, Barry. Get your foot in the door first, I suppose, and then see there might be other projects that they weren't expecting that might come in. Like, I'm sure there's a big project here, like COVID-19 stuff, that maybe someone's already in there doing similar type things, and now they're getting more work because of it or something, So, okay, thank you so much. Any other questions, folks, before we finish up? Tony, thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
No, thank you very much for the opportunity. It's great.
No, you're welcome. I mean, it's folks, if you do know anyone that is struggling with tenders, will you send them Tony's way, because he is brilliant and he helps you put it together and all, and I found him excellent. So thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining, and you can watch the replay later and we can get those slides as well if you want to contact Tony. Thank you, Mary. Oh, Laura said she's going to give you a shout. She's a few times for you. There you go. I've connected. I'm sure you connected on Twitter. Oh, sorry. There's another question here. Tony, what's your Twitter handle? Actually, have you got one?
I'm sure it's Orbital Group.
All right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have it. Yeah, I've put it in there.
Yeah.
You've no personal one yourself, no? Okay. Yeah.
I do, and I can't remember what it is. It's probably Tony Corrigan or some. I know it's a picture of me and my son on a boat. So if you see a picture of a boat,
I know someone who can train you on that, so don't worry.
Okay.
We'll do it. Yvonne, thank you so much. Excellent webinar, very clear and specific. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch for the slides. There you go. Thank you. And Barry, well done. Thanks very much. And Vicky and ladies, if any of you are not a member of Women's Inspire Network, definitely check it out, because we do these webinars all the time. There's a business clinic tomorrow. Would you like me to throw the link in for the business clinic, folks, while you're here? That's the membership link, and then you don't have to be a member to join the business clinic. Tony, is there anything else you want to add before we go?
I would say just the government doesn't need to do any tendering at all for below €5,000 spend. So now is a great time just to ring up your local authority or ring up your local Leo office and just ask them what work you can do for them. There's a huge willingness on the part of government at this time to support small business, and if there's anything they can do to give you money, they will. So just get in touch with them. Just ring them up and see what you can do.
Good to know. Good to know. Thank you so much. And thank you, Shirley. Thank you, everybody. And thanks, Tony, for your time. And I shall see you later. Bye.
Great. Thanks. Bye now.